right, honorable members, I'm going to start with us to introduce ourselves, and then from there we'll ask the department with Minister also who has joined us today to introduce our officials that have joined us from the Department of Human Settlement as we look at the budget of the Vote 8, which is the Human Settlement. My name is Matlodi Maseko, and I'm the chairperson for the Standing Committee. And then before I continue with the member that has joined in person, I recognize your hand, member Andrikas.
Thank you, Chair. Andrikas van der Western, member of the committee, and I was actually also testing whether you are able to see our hands when we raise them. Thank you very much.
Okay, member. Yeah, you raise it very high. I can see that. Member August.
Good morning, Chairperson. Thank you very much. It's Sean August, member of the committee.
Thank you very much. Members online, can you introduce yourselves?
Good morning, Chair. It's Derek America, permanent member of the committee.
Good morning, Chair. Pet Moran, alternate member of this committee.
Okay, I see only member Marana. I guess member Lily is not online yet, and I'm going to hand over to you, Minister Simmons.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and good morning to all the Standing Committee members. From my side, I'll introduce the staff from the Ministry, and I'll ask the HOD to introduce the team from the department itself from the Ministry. I have my Head of Ministry, Puluwetu Njalo, and I've got my Private Secretary, Carmen Hartnick here. And obviously myself is the Provincial Minister, Tertius Simmons. HOD.
Good morning, Chairperson members. I'm Pila Maisela, Acting Head of Department. And to my left, it's Mr. David. Maybe Chairperson, because I know you like hearing the colleagues' voices. I'll ask the team to introduce themselves.
Good morning, Chairperson and committee members. Francois de Wet, CFO for the department.
Good morning, Renil Davis, Management Accounting from the departments.
Good morning, Camilla August, Chief Director, Human Settlement Planning. Thank you.
Morning, Chairperson. Morning, members. Brian Denton, Director, Project Administration.
Good morning, Shanaz Adams from Strategic Support.
We have to know each other, all of us who are in the room. Starting with you, ma'am. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And on my right?
Shamish Jones, Procedural Officer.
Thank you very much. Now we know each other, we can continue. Honorable members, we know on the agenda we do have deliberation of the Vote 8 Human Settlements in the Schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill 2022. And also, I would appreciate if we can do the consideration and adoption of the draft committee report after we finish with the deliberation. So far, I haven't received any apologies. Member Lily hasn't joined us yet. And also online, I see Pamela. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We know by now the rules of engagement on the virtual meetings. So I'm not going to go through members, each and every rule that is there. This is our new norm that you have adopted to. So we will continue with the meeting as per the agenda. I'm going to hand over to CFO. But before CFO, Minister first, before I hand over for the presentation with the CFO. Minister, if there's anything that you would want to say to us.
No, thank you very much, Chair. And once again, thank you for the opportunity to put vote 8 before the Standing Committee for your consideration. And I do this obviously in a climate where we have seen the dire fiscal environment of our country and a lot of uncertainties, as my colleague, Honourable Minister Mahania, alluded to in his speech yesterday. But we also need to understand that access to an housing opportunity in this province promotes safety, well-being and the dignity for our residents, is emphasized by the Premier in his State of the Province address. So all endeavours from my department side are geared towards delivering these opportunities which the Premier highlighted. But for us, the key stakeholder is the citizen, and hence what we deliver and what we are tabling today is actually for the citizen. It's for you to improve the quality of your life. Now, it is a reality that we have more than 500,000 residents or possible qualifying beneficiaries on the Western Cape Housing Demand Database that are still expressing their need for a possible housing opportunity. I need to say a housing opportunity and not a house, because given the various programs in my department, not everybody will ultimately be afforded to get a house from the state moving forward. That is why the revised priority list of those individuals who will first and foremost be considered for a formal house or housing opportunity is the first 5 which is listed as it is on page 2, Madam Chairperson and committee members. Obviously, I'm elated and excited because last week the National Minister made the announcement that FLISP is now a de-linked option. It will become a de-linked option with effect from the 1st of April, which is something which the Standing Committee, together with myself and the department, has been going on and lobbying for since pre-2019. So that's a great success to the Western Cape Provincial Government and this Standing Committee and the role that they are playing. But how will FLISP be de-linked, and how will this see more opportunities created for the possible qualifying beneficiaries of the Western Cape? And these, I need to put this on record, it will focus through pension or provident-backed funding loans, through cooperatives or community-based saving schemes. And we know that Stockvelds in the Western Cape is a multi-billion rand sector actually, through government employees housing schemes, through other employer-assisted housing schemes, Madam Chair, unsecured loans, own revenue, but also through installment sales or rent-to-own agreements. Madam Chair, last year I did announce that we will be amending the Western Cape's housing delivery model, putting affordable housing at the center of what we do. We have clearly stated what this department means and this provincial government means by affordable housing. So we've given sufficient clarity to members of the Standing Committee and members of the House. But Madam Chair, that does not say that we are not focusing on our other core responsibilities. Part of affordable housing entails social housing, and for the first time, we are seeing projects being rolled out outside of the city of Cape Town. The committee also needs to be aware that there are social housing restructuring zones, which gives us guidance where in the non-metro areas we can ultimately start focusing on unlocking those opportunities outside of the city of Cape Town borders. We need to understand that previously possible qualifying beneficiaries in the non-metro areas could not gain access to these opportunities. So this is spreading the opportunities to all the possible qualifying beneficiaries in this province. Madam Chair, but we also need to understand that there's an increased urbanization, more so in the city of Cape Town, as people seek opportunities, and we welcome those individuals in our borders of the Western Cape. But this puts a greater need for adequate shelter, which has seen through COVID-19 almost a doubling of the number of informal settlements across the Western Cape. So another pillar which we'll be focusing on is also informal settlement upgrading, which is also adequately covered in the budget. But Madam Chair, this is a forward-thinking organ of state. This is a forward-thinking department that's part of that organ of state. So we also focus on innovation. how we can streamline our processes even further to ensure that the delivery of housing opportunities can be accelerated, which is one of the key 4 radical drivers since I took office as the provincial minister, with my department team backing me fully behind that. And in this financial year, Madam Chair and Standing Committee, you will see us now enhancing further ICT systems, which includes the staggered digitization of our beneficiary administration process even further. We will aim to drive increased traffic, and I do implore your assistance in this as the Standing Committee for our possible beneficiaries to use the housing app, which is currently sitting at just over 10,000 users. Given that there's more than 500,000, you would really have to see more people actually use this app. Because as a provincial department, we are putting our possible qualifying beneficiaries, we're putting access to an housing opportunity in the palm of their hands. And that is the biggest innovation that we could have delivered for our beneficiaries and for our citizens. And in a nutshell, Madam Chair, that is my input to lead us into this deliberations on the budget before my CFO starts. And I wish to thank you once again for supporting our new innovative approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Members, I'm going to take the department's presentation because we do have infographics that they've prepared for us. I think by now you have seen it. So we are going to go through the infographics. Is then that I can take the questions that will be directed to Minister and the department. So Acting HOD, Mepila, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson and members. So we'll be presenting the department's budget. The department has been allocated 2.4 billion for this financial year. And in terms of the breakdown, Program 1, which is responsible for administration, is getting 124 million. Program 2, 25 million, and this program is responsible for research, planning, and policy. Program 3 deals with housing development or implementation, is getting the biggest share of our budget, which is 2.2 billion. And this is primarily coming from the 2 grants, which is the Human Settlements Development Grant and Information Upgrading of Informal Settlements Partnership Grant. And Program 4, which deals with housing assets, is getting 51 million. Important to note here, Chairperson and members, is that as part of the 124 million that we're getting from Program 1 is the funding allocation that we're getting from the Provincial Treasury. You would recall that in previous years, we've been reporting that as a department, we were funding our cost of employee, compensation of employee from other revenue sources. And we indicated that this is not sustainable. And for the first time, Provincial Treasury has come to the party to fund the department fully in terms of its compensation of employees for this first year of the MTEF. Yes, for the outer years, we still need to resolve the sustainability issues in terms of the funding, but I want to just confirm that this is the start and this is a step in the right direction. Important to also note in terms of the allocation, Chairperson and members, is that there is a direct correlation on how we are allocating the 2.2 billion that we're getting in terms of the various districts. If you would recall, the minister in his opening remarks has indicated that we are sitting with over 500,000 of people on the waiting list. In actual fact, if I were to just be exact, we're sitting at 568,000. And of that, the biggest share comes from the city of Cape Town, with the demand sitting at 59%, Cape Winelands at 13%, Garden Route at 12%, West Coast at 8%, Overbeck at 6%, and Central Karoo at 2%. If you look at how the grant is allocated in relation to that demand, there is a direct correlation with the city of Cape Town, or rather projects within the city of Cape Town, get allocated 45% of the grant. And if I take a look at Central Karoo, which has got the least demand, it's only been allocated 1%. That just goes to show, Chairperson and members, again, that we do utilize the data to inform our budgeting processes. And just in terms of how we allocate that, the process, we go through a very rigorous process in terms of our project planning. and business processes where we engage with municipalities in the development of these projects, and it goes through a project readiness matrix where projects that are not ready to implement in that particular year are not supported by the department. And after we have satisfied ourselves that the submissions that were made by the municipalities will in actual fact assist us in the delivery, we then submit the project list to National Department for approval. So that process, we're comfortable that it follows a very vigorous process. And this 2.4 billion, Chairperson and members, will be spent on achieving the outcomes as listed in the block on your right. And these really deal with the issues of improving efficiencies, livable neighborhoods, access to adequate housing and empowerment opportunities to citizens, and of course, security of tenure through home ownership. Also to highlight, Chairperson, just under the activities, I think Minister has already touched on some of the innovations in terms of ICT that we're wanting to do in this year. We are looking at 2 ICT interventions and a knowledge management project which seeks to further advance knowledge within the department and also just externally in terms of our business. And we will also be conducting some evaluation studies because the monitoring and evaluation is an important part of what we do. So in this financial year, we will be conducting some evaluation studies on just some of our business processes. And of course, our commitment to ensuring that all invoices are paid within 30 days. We've set the target at 98%, and we have been delivering on that year on year. And also an important activity for us is just engagement with municipalities. And we've set 16 municipal engagements during this year. I just want to highlight, Chairperson, that this excludes ministerial outreach programs. So if we add ministers' outreach programs, of course, that number will certainly increase. This just focuses on engagements that are driven by the department where we engage with the municipalities throughout the year. And in terms of livable neighborhoods, we've got research papers that we will be completing in this financial year, and 4 of those have been highlighted. Without necessarily going into detail, I think important to note under the research papers that we'll be conducting in this financial year is the issue of understanding why our SME contractors are failing, because in the previous year, our performance has been impacted by the termination of contracts, and that's largely due to poor performance. So whilst we've gone and terminated some of these contracts, we've said it's important for us to understand what are the challenges within the space so that we can then assist the contractors, because we're not in the business of ensuring that their businesses close out. So that one of the research papers will be focusing on that. And of course, another one, if I may just quickly highlight, is just the issue of sectional title B and G. Given the call for us to densify and the scarcity of land, we need to find a mechanism to allow, to enable us to develop multi-story BNG units. And that is one of the research, papers that we will be focusing in this financial year. And of course, we will continue to provide support, technical support to all the 26 municipalities. That is the 25 municipalities, including the district municipality, which is the Garden Route district municipality. You'd recall, Chairperson and members, that we signed an agreement with the district municipality the previous financial year. So we're continuing to provide support to all 26 municipalities. And in terms of the upgrading of informal settlements, we have committed to make sure that we develop 50 upgrading plans. The new grant that was introduced in the previous financial year calls us to develop upgrading plans for all the 800 rather. Informal settlements across the province, and we've set out a target of 50, and this will ensure that the upgrading is actually wholly integrated and it encompasses all the principles that are outlined in our strategies as it relates to informal settlement support program. And Chairperson, also an important one to just highlight under the livable neighborhoods is just the partnership agreements that we will be concluding with the key stakeholders. Minister has alluded that we have now managed to get the revised fleece policy approved by National, which was a motion that was sponsored by this department, and we will be looking at entering into agreements with the banking institutions to foster those arrangements with our partners so that we can, again, accelerate in terms of our mandate. And going into the next section, Chairperson and members, around the access to adequate housing and empowerment opportunities, this talks to our non-financial targets. We are looking at delivering 2,747 sites in this financial year and 8,463 units. That brings a total of about 11,210 housing opportunities. We had prepared and submitted this prior to us getting confirmation of the increased subsidy quantum, Chairperson. With the new subsidy, revised subsidy quantum, which will come into effect from 1 April, it will certainly affect these figures, and we will revise these figures. We anticipate that the net impact will be 232 million, which means that we will need to reduce those targets, and we will bring the adjustment to your attention, Chairperson, as soon as we have concluded the processes. And we will not target the reduction on the service sites. We are looking at reducing the number of top structures, given the fact that our allocation hasn't increased to absorb the revised quantum. In actual fact, the correspondence from National has indicated that we need to make it work within what has already been allocated. So we will have to revise those downwards following the legislated processes. And there's still commitment, Chairperson, to make sure that we spend 50% of our grant to contractors in targeted groups. You'd recall that year on year, we've continued to exceed our targets when it comes to expenditure on HSDG. So we are committed to continue on that trend. And in terms of the jobs that will be facilitated, we're looking at 1,000 jobs that will be facilitated. Just important to note here, Chairperson, that these are the jobs that relate to projects where we as a department are the developers. It does not take into account the jobs that are implemented by the municipality. And of course, with the 2.4 billion that we're getting, there's a lot more jobs that are created through the contracts with the municipalities and the contractors directly. And another important one to note, Chairperson, is just the increase in the target when it comes to upgrading of informal settlements. This target has increased to 50 in this financial year, where we're looking at identifying 50 informal settlements to provide interim engineering services, as well as upgrading them to what we refer to as phase 3. And we will continue. Minister has alluded to the focus on innovation, to looking at alternative building technologies, and to that extent, a target of 700 has been set. And when it comes to the security of tenure through home ownership, Chairperson, our targets, we have indeed listened to the committee. You'd recall when we presented our annual report, I think the committee asked why our target was set so low. We're happy to present to the committee that we have reviewed our processes internally. We also reported that we'll be mainstreaming the title deeds component under one program, and to that extent the target has increased to 10,150, Chairperson, and is broken down into pre-1994, pre-2014, post-2014, as well as post-2019. We are reviewing that, and we will be looking at increasing it in the following financial years, given the fact that we've got a backlog of 63,000. We accept that the 10,000 in relation to the 63 may seem low, but we are confident that with the changes and the controls that we've put in place, which will be rolling out for the first time in this financial year, that it would in actual fact enable us to increase that target so that we can reduce the backlog of 63,000 when it comes to title deeds. I will leave it there, Chairperson, and I think we'll, as a department, we will then be happy to take questions in relation to what has been presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, and also the acting HOD. Honorable members, what is important is that was the budget breakdown. If you can look at it on the infographics and also use your APP, it will make it easier for you to ask questions and to try to get an understanding of some of the decisions. So I'm going to open up for the questions. I recognize Member America, and after Member America, it will be Member Andrikas van der Westhuizen. Over to you, Ses.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister and HOD and team. It's an unenviable task that you have with the limited resources and the housing backlog of over 568,000. And at the current rate, we will never be able to provide an opportunity for some of these beneficiaries. So, Chair, my question are basically one, the housing opportunities listed, whether they include pipeline projects, or are they completely new opportunities that specifically been identified for this financial year? Secondly, the department has set aside money for the acquisition of land. If we could possibly get more sort of clarity in terms of where and you know, and what kind of land will be acquired. Number three, in terms of the informal settlements upgrades, it's laudable that we envisage to upgrade 50 informal settlements. And I'm sure the department, I'm not sure, but I can get clarity whether the department have already identified those 50. And I don't see in the APP that there's a quarterly target as to how many will be sort of upgraded within a particular quarter. It is merely just listed as an annual target. And with regard to the upgrades, what kind of upgrades is envisaged with these formal settlements? Furthermore, related to that, Chair, is interim engineering services to be rendered. Can we get more clarity in terms of what are these interim engineering services that is spoken about, and whether municipalities are brought in partnership with regard to the provision of those kind of services? Because we know that the biggest obstacle for housing delivery is infrastructure within municipalities, that they do not have the funding, and neither do they have the capacity at times to provide infrastructure for housing delivery. Firstly, another question, Chair, and the FLIS opportunities, and I mean, it is pleasing to note that the department and the minister has managed to achieve the objective to ensure that there's a delinking of the opportunities to expand the broader potential beneficiaries. The question relating to that, Chair, is there a communication strategy that is considered to be rolled out to bring the qualifying criteria for opportunities to many people, and I'm sure there are so many people who possibly don't know. And secondly, that the new model that would expand the qualifying criteria for potential beneficiaries. And then lastly, Chair, when will we see a permanent HOD appointed? Because the acting HOD is fulfilling two roles, that of implementation and that of HOD, because I'm sure there's an imbalance in workload for the HOD. When could we possibly see that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Andrikas.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, and thank you very much for the officials for the briefing, but also for the hard work in preparing this budget for us. My first point, Chair, is on page 337 of the 2022 estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure document. I think we need to point out that total treasury funding is only expected to increase by 2.45%, which I think is really a very sorry state. We know this is less than half of our current inflation rate, which actually means that it's a decrease in real monetary terms of the money allocated to housing. And with a sharply increasing housing demand, it is really a pity to see that housing and human settlements is not a priority of the of Treasury and therefore of the central government. And I would really want to use this opportunity to call on government to say, please, we are sitting on a time bomb. We know more and more people are coming to the Western Cape. We are not able to keep up with the growing demand if we are only going to be able to provide 11,000. And I have just heard that, even those targets may have to be adjusted downwards as the cost of building increases quite fast. And I think we can also just expect that the current strife between Russia and the Ukraine will lead to a possible increase, particularly in building costs that is so closely linked to transport costs, which is closely linked to diesel and fuel prices, etc. So that is my first remark, and I'm just wondering whether we can really look forward to human settlements being reprioritized by national government going forward. The next remark is on page 339, and it links on to my previous one. If we look at housing development and we've got an increase from the revised estimate of 0.86% for this year, again, it is a contraction in real monetary terms. So I think we must accept that the department is under severe pressure and that we would not be able to fulfill the dreams of many people who dreamt of having their own places. So my first question is the one on staff compensation. Since this is the first budget meeting of this cycle, I see, for example, on page 340, that compensation of employees will see a retraction of almost 2%. Now, last year at this time, we were faced with the uncertainty of the wage increases for public servants. If I'm not mistaken, the court only recently ruled on that matter, and I'm just wondering whether we could be informed on whether that court ruling has already been implemented in the drafting of these figures in the budget, and does the 1.84% decrease really mean that we will have to get by with fewer employees in terms of the human settlements department? My next question, Chair, has to do with the target for the transfer of title deeds. We've got a backlog that we want to be addressed, and the acting HOD quite correctly referred to that it's a matter of priority for the standing committee, that more and more people should be given their title deeds. We also know that the longer you wait, the more you run into problems with people passing on, etc. So the next question is just, did I hear you correctly? We want to build more than 11,000 houses or transfer service sites, but the target in terms of title deed transfers is just more than 10,000, and I'm now referring to that infographic, which means that instead of addressing the 60,000 backlog, we are actually still failing to keep up, and the backlog will grow. Or did I understand this incorrectly? Because those are the figures that I see on that very same page of the infographic in terms of what we intend to do this coming year, in terms of housing delivery, and what we intend to do in terms of title deed transfers. Then, Chair, I would appreciate it if we could get some information. On page 342, there's a very, very sharp decrease in departmental transfers to local government. We've never since 2018 seen such a low figure of transfers to local government. Does it mean that there's been a strategic decision by the provincial department to rather undertake more of these housing projects under its own administration? Or how must we interpret that very, very sharp decrease that we see there? And then lastly, Chair, on page 344, I see that there's also a very quite significant decrease in goods and services. I'm referring to table 911, the third line there, goods and services. The revised estimate for this current financial year has been 28.6 million, and it's going to go down to 19.7 million. Please, Chair, these are some big changes which I would like to be clarified for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Member Maran.
Thanks, thanks, Chairperson, and good mornings again. Good mornings, MEC and your staff, all those present. Chair, thanks very much. I think, Chair, before I start with my questions, it's important to note, Chair, that yesterday in the budget speech, the MEC of Finance, whenever you've spoken about, you've used the term housing, Chair, and I think it's important to note, Chair, that people want integrated human settlements and not just a housing opportunity. Secondly, Chair, also let me welcome the almost R500 million when it comes to the informal settlement upgrading. And I think the Honourable America have touched on that specific issue and the 15 where they are, informal settlements. Also welcome the increase, Chair, when it comes to the human settlement budget. Chair, when the Premier in his State of the Province address mentioned a new department that will be set up, the new Department for Infrastructure, I'm not hearing this department speaking about that particular infrastructure department and whether it will basically affect, because what we see is basically the Human Settlements Department that's planning and how they will roll out the different projects. Nothing about the new department that speaks to infrastructure and whether that department will impact on human settlements. Chair 345, page 345, that speaks to flips. Chair, and we know that the Minister of Human Settlements have met with MECs and the decision basically, Chair, to allow for financing from other financial institutions. Do this department, Chair, have more in an idea how many people will benefit from flips? Is there a list that will speak to that? Then Chair 345 that speaks to 350 that speaks to security and tenant. Chair, just want to know, how does this department seek to achieve this, ensuring more security of tenant when it cuts this program, score function, housing properties maintenance budget by 56%, but increase the budget of the administration of this program by 46%? There's a cut of 56% when it comes to the housing property maintenance, but there's an increase of 46% when it comes to the administration. Then, Chair, when it comes to 345, it speaks to training, Chair. We see, Chair, that the department plans not to appoint interns for this year. What is the reason for this? Then, Chair, 356. 356, Chair, speaks to consultants and professionals, infrastructure. We see, Chair, that one of the two largest payments budgeted in this department is for consultants, Chair. Is there any reason, Chair, why this particular program, why are these services not insourced but outsourced? Let me stop there for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Member August.
Chairperson, thank you. I just want to welcome and thanks to the department. I've been covered with questions.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to the department. I think you captured all the questions from the members. Start with the minister, and then we'll give direction to who's going to take each question.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for the members for, I think, a very in-depth unpacking of questions pertaining to our budget vote 8. Obviously, there's quite a number of questions. I only count 2 that's been directed to me or where I need to give clarity on. The one relates to the new permanent or the permanent placement of a full-time HOD. And then the question from Member Marin in terms of the previous SOPA announcement of the new department. And thirdly, the drop in transfer to local governments in terms of the book. Madam Chair, as you are aware, I'll link this to the SOPA announcement, so it makes a lot more sense to the members why I'm responding in this way. The Premier announced during SOPA the announcement of a new department that will be called the Department of Infrastructure. But the Premier also announced, linked to that there's a due process of consultation that will emanate before the formal formation of this new department. He did unpack, however, aspects of how this new department will look. It will incorporate human settlements, which he mentioned first. It will incorporate aspects of public works and infrastructure, which includes roads and planning, to mention not a few which he mentioned in his speech. But taking that into cognizance, and this committee would remember last year, the Premier spoke of refresh, readjusting the way the provincial government works to streamline to the reality of a post-COVID-19 reality. So this all links into the SOPA announcement. So with that in mind, I, as the provincial minister, did not see it fit to place somebody in a permanent position. I mean, in the next 18 months, ultimately, there would be a new Department of Infrastructure, which will incorporate my department. So I did inform my executive that I will not be filling this position permanently. Ms. Maisela will remain the acting HOD until such time which all consultation processes have been concluded and that the new department will be announced and how it will work. That consultation process is ongoing as we speak. So I think that addresses the issue of making the HOD permanent. Madam Chair, the second question relates to the drop in transfer to local government. Madam Chair, this has been the debate even before I became the provincial minister, where we are seeing, sadly, the brain drain of technical capacity at municipalities. This has had a massive impact on this provincial department, even before 2019. We had a session together with local government, with all municipalities, more than a year ago, where we formally agreed to a hybrid implementation model for human settlements in the Western Cape. Because many municipalities acknowledged they do not have all the technical skill sets that's needed to be actually the implementing agent of this department. How does this hybrid work? Madam Chair, there are certain municipalities where municipalities do have the capacity, so they do act as the implementing agent for my department. Then there are municipalities which acknowledge their lack of adequate technical skills and they hand their projects over to province to ultimately implement. I can mention Bito as a very good example, where you also see the very accelerating result of what happens when municipalities acknowledge their own shortfalls and give it back to the department. So that is why you will see a drop in transfer, Madam Chair. But you will also have noted in yesterday's budget speech by my colleague, Minister Mania, that there is a budgeted amount for assisting local government in terms of upskilling local government. What skills they will be focusing on? Well, that's not my budget vote, so I can't expand on that. But what we are doing is a hybrid model to ensure that we can attain our targets. Otherwise, we will never reach our targets, Madam Chair. And with the local governments, we are also suffering massive blows in terms of MIG allocation in other grants. It's logical that the load of which is now expected from them to be carried will also increase and refocus the way they do their budget at local government. So human settlements is not on an island of our own. We are cognizant of our partners at local government, similarly to other key role players. And it's in that regard that this hybrid model has been agreed upon by all parties. I will now hand over the bulk of the questions to my HOD, and she can then delegate from there onwards. But once again, very insightful questions, and I do welcome it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister. Any follow-up to the Minister before we continue with the questions, members? Member America, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a follow-up, it's just a remark, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for clarifying my question, and it's completely understandable in the context of what you have stated. But I probably unduly concerned about the void that may have existed, if so, of the position of Chief Director Human Settlement Implementation, and perhaps I don't know if such a void does exist, or whether it is being sort of augmented by, the existing staff that would take on that kind of responsibilities. And then secondly, Chair, I fully understand the lack of capacity in certain municipalities, and I welcome the department's willingness to partner with those municipalities and assist them with the implementation of projects. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Maran.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, let me say thanks to the MEC for his response in terms of the new department as announced by the Premier in ISOPA, and I clearly understand that it needs a consultation process, Chair. But this particular department, Chair, and I'm not sure whether it's too late, but in a way it has failed. It's not even there. It should have been there, Chair, to deal with the issue of transacts. And when we visited basically that particular project, and we saw that there's a need basically for the three different departments as it currently is, human settlements, public works, road and planning, Chair, to interact with each other. Because what we have picked up, Chair, and people that will receive the houses, especially from Zolathemba, kids will have to cross the R62 from that new housing development back to Zolathemba, because there's currently no school. The same with kids, basically people that will receive the houses that comes from Avian Park. They will have to cross the Verleersdorp Road back to your Avian Park Primary School and other schools there. So we have raised this particular issue when we have visited that particular project, and even the traffic or the director for traffic services have said that that particular road will become a death trap, because small kids will have to cross that particular roads, and I'm not sure how far the building of the bridge that will connect that particular areas, how far is that? And maybe this new department will discuss that particular issue. But in the meantime, it will be a concern. Kids will be in the line, Chair, of those cars that will drive that particular road. And I just hope, Chair, that there will be no deaths whenever houses will be delivered. We know now that, say, the end of May, that some of those houses will be delivered. Those particular project basically covers Zolathemba, your Durings, your Rosseville, and other areas. Right? Our other concern also will be that it will create unemployment, because some of those people, especially on farms, will have to leave their jobs and come to that particular area where there's no jobs. The houses that the acting HOD have spoken about that will be created it will not be permanent jobs, Chair. So, but my biggest fear is there is no bridge for those kids to cross those dangerous zones. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Member Maran. The more you talk, the more you fade away. So try to keep the volume at the same level so that we can hear everything. But I tend to believe the department have heard everything or any comment that you have said. I think from my side, Minister, it will be, if I heard you correctly, you said the 18 months planning for, and I'm talking to the issue of the appointment of the HOD. If the planning still has to happen in 18 months, why are you reacting within this financial year? And that is based on, if I heard you, with the 18 months. Because one of the concerns, I think, from the members that we raise is, if you have the Mepila as the acting HOD, and also she is also the director for some of the shortcomings that we have identified, how do you balance that responsibility that we don't see those shortcomings as we go out? And maybe Member Maran was talking to that with Transhex, that there were shortcomings, and we tend to believe one of the shortcomings is when you have one official had to try to swing both ways to make sure that the project goes smoothly, but that doesn't happen because of the over commitment to the responsibilities that is there. And number two, it will be, I mean, I'll make an example of the city that the biggest challenge is the infrastructure in the city with the projects that we implement in the city. Now, if you have the acting HOD and then you don't have the director of the project implementation that foresees the problems that can come in as you end up having the invasion of the houses that you have already built, because there's no infrastructure attached to those houses because of the communication to the city. Are you saying, again, for this financial year, we can foresee something like that happening, or you have something in place to react to that needs that can be there for the other position that maybe it might be shortchanged as you don't have anyone to react to that? So in principle is, how do you mitigate to make sure that there is a balance? And the announcement before the Premier finishes with a consultation, what if it's not going to work when the further consultation happens? What's going to happen? Are we going to go back and say, okay, now we've got the HOD? That's why I'm trying to find out now, why now the announcement? What is it that we have to see in this budget that's saying, in fact, there is about 2 or 3 steps that we have implemented in the way moving forward to that? Over to you, Minister.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for your concerns regarding Pilar, if she will be able to carry to that. I had the same concern. But in-house, she and I have had this discussion. You would have picked up when we did the introductions, we have regional managers, which is an expansion focusing on implementation and planning. But with the effect that she's going to be the acting HOD for possibly till the end of my term, I envisage, what we will be doing internally, we will be rotating the Chief Director of Implementation. Now, my department is blessed with a team that is multi-skilled, a team that can step up, that can get things done, that understands. They've been part of the team with Pilar for many, many years. So I think that does alleviate your concern and Member America's concern that she won't be doing both caps. Because I want the acting HOD focused, given that the focus that I will be driving till the end of my term is affordable housing, and she's a core component together with my CFO and all my chief directors. So we would want a focused individual that's part of that team as we now seek to radically accelerate on our key driver of affordable housing. So that does alleviate that, I do believe, to a certain point. Madam Chair, you are correct. I did say 18 months because in the Premier's own speech, he did say he projects the consultation process will take around about 18 months. As I said, that process is ongoing. Unfortunately, I'm not clairvoyant, so I can't tell you how that process is going to go. But the Premier would not make an announcement unless, as the Provincial Cabinet, as the executive, we haven't been deliberating the process of refresh for quite some time. So the Premier would only make a formal announcement, which he has done in February, based on where we are heading. So I look forward to the consultation process, Madam Chair, and as it unfolds, I will keep you and the Chair and Standing Committee abreast on where we are. I think that is crucial for you to understand as well, so that you can get more certainty, because I know in all spheres of government, the quickest news that spreads is gossip, not fact. So I don't want to have gossip becoming fact to members of the Standing Committee, which ultimately then feeds into, sadly, the public domain without having all the relevant facts. So I will keep you abreast of that. Madam Honourable Marin, in terms of Transx, yes, I do welcome your inputs. The plan for Transx does actually include a school site. Currently, the Department of Education is of the opinion that the existing schools does still have the capacity to absorb any scholars into their system. In terms of the aspect of safety, and just so that you understand, my department fully paid for the circle, which ultimately we would have ultimately wanted some of our sister departments to contribute, and we all know how much the circle costs. But what we have in our planning, and Pilar has been engaging the administration of the municipality, and we are also looking at alternative funding to how we can actually build a pedestrian bridge in due course. Hopefully from our side, looking at alternative funding for that bridge. So the team did take note of your concerns when you did do the site visit. We are looking into that. But in a nutshell, there is a school site planned. But until such time that the Transx site gets occupied by qualifying beneficiaries, and we will seek to accelerate more opportunities on that site, that will unlock a possible new school in the foreseeable future. And that is where the new Department of Infrastructure does play a key role, because many a times, Madam Chair, you are confronted as a standing committee, just like I'm as a minister. We build new settlements, but then there is no school, or there is no clinic, or there is no shopping mall, or there is no this, or there is no transport connectivity. And that is the thought of the Cabinet in support of the Premier's idea of this Department of Infrastructure. But the nuts and bolts of how we are going to approach that, that is where the consultation process is coming, because we need to understand when I talk about planning, my own department is planning, local government is planning, the Department of the Premier is planning, education is, and I can go on and on and on. So how do you bring all of this together to accelerate and unlock the true potential of government assets? And how do you unlock sustainable settlements that have everything together? And that is ultimately the bigger picture and the objective of where we are heading. But once again, we need to deal with the way the government is currently structured. That's why there's still a budget vote. That's why we still have our housing plans. That's why we still submit it, and we will submit it until such time that all due processes and consultation is concluded. Then, in the foreseeable future, whatever the new vote number is even going to be, then I think we can entertain the nuts and bolts of how that new Department of Planning, or sorry, implement infrastructure is going to work. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll hand over to my thing.
Thank you very much. Yeah, over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Chairperson and members. I'll cover some of the questions, and then I'm going to ask the colleagues to also add and cover some of the other questions that I'm not able to respond to. To start with the member Van der Westhuizen's questions, the first one you asked whether the housing opportunities listed included the pipeline, or is it just new projects that have been identified for this year? The targets that's indicated in the APP and our infographic is only for projects that will yield results in terms of non-financial targets. So it does not include projects that are in the pipeline. Projects that are in the pipeline are funded for separately through the grant that we release to assist the municipalities to do exactly that, to plan and package. There's about 10% of the grant that has been allocated to enable municipalities to actually prepare the projects so that they are ready for implementation in the outer year. So the 11,210 housing opportunities that is reflected in our documents actually relates to the sites and services that will be delivered in this financial year. And it's a combination of new projects as well as projects that are carrying on from previous financial year, because the projects by their very nature, in terms of the human settlements, they are implemented over multiple years. So it is a combination of new and those that we're carrying over from the previous financial year, but it certainly excludes what is referred to as projects in the pipeline. Those are paid for through our planning fees that we allocate to municipalities. The second question, you wanted to know the money that's for acquisition of land, where and what sort of kind of land is this? In this financial year, there is no allocation for land acquisition, but we have made provision for land acquisition in the outer years. All the properties that relates to 45% of land acquired, we're just now taking those land parcels into the next stage in terms of the planning process to ensure that they are rezoned. But for the 22-23 financial year, we will not be acquiring any properties, but that does not mean that in the year of implementation, municipalities may not bring application for us to consider, and all of that will be dealt with through our business planning processes, potentially for funding and inclusion in the outer years. And then your third question, you asked the informal settlements upgrade that's been identified, the 50 that we've identified for upgrading, do we know them, and why is there no quarterly target? Yes, member, we do have a list that forms up that 50 informal settlements. The department did an assessment of all the informal settlements in the province, and we categorized them in terms of those that are in urgent need for services, those that are in urgent need for relocation, and those that are ready for implementation in terms of what we refer to as stage 3. So we then pulled the 50 from that list, and we excluded those which have got bulk infrastructure constraints. So we do have that list, and we can certainly forward that to the committee so that you can look at where these are across the province. And the reason why we do not have quarterly targets, in the past, we used to spread the targets over the 4 quarters, and we would fail to deliver during the year. And the reason for that is because the upgrading of informal settlements is a very complex process. And we've certainly learned from that experience, which is why now we've pushed the targets to outer year, because it does allow for the work that needs to happen during that upgrading process, which includes relocation of some of the beneficiaries out of the way of construction so that we can put the services in the roads and then bringing them back on again. And that process is lengthy, and putting it on the fourth quarter would allow us to make sure that we cater for all that work that needs to be done in terms of upgrading of informal settlements. And your next question, which is linked to that, was what kind of upgrades are we referring to when we're talking about interim engineering services? In terms of the program itself, the upgrading of informal settlements program is divided into 3 phases. The phase 1 relates to the planning, where we go and carry out the statutory processes in terms of town planning, environmental processes, and identify land that is required to deacon. The second phase deals with installation of what's referred to as interim services, also known as shared services. So that's where we put standpipes and ablution facilities to be shared by by the households within an informal settlement. So there is a standard that is set by the National Department, and that says that for every standpipe that we put that needs to service 25 households, and for every ablution block that we put, it needs to service 5 households. So we're working towards that standard. So when we're talking engineering, interim engineering services, it refers to shared services. And when we're talking to phase 3, when we're referring to phase 3 rather, then that talks to now upgrading of the settlement fully, in other words, on a 1:1. So in other words, you service the site and that household has got their own access to ablution facilities, and we can also transfer that site to the beneficiary. So that is a definition in terms of the various upgrading phases in terms of the program. And you then asked the question about fleece opportunities. Are we going to be issuing a communication around that? Yes, we certainly are. We have been having internal work sessions to exactly look into that communication, and we are looking at issuing that before the new financial year. We're having a follow-up session internally on the 17th, and as soon as we've ironed out the processes in terms of the rollout, we will then be issuing that circular and communication to all the municipalities. And we will certainly also use our monthly radio slots to further explain to the communities and the beneficiaries how the Dealing Flex program will be implemented. We anticipate that it will be implemented in phases, but all of that information will be contained in the documentation and the communication that will be issued out to our stakeholders and beneficiaries. And then Member Driekus, I'm going to ask Francois to then respond to all the issues around the finance as raised, but perhaps maybe I can just start with the issue around the contraction of the budget as it relates to the COE, compensation of employees. You're quite right, Member. There is a decrease in the compensation of employee, and I think I would like to link that to the question that was asked by Member Moran as to why there's no provision for interns in this financial year. The department, since the 2009-2010 modernization, which saw the Department of Local Government and Housing split, there's been a deficit when it comes to compensation of employees. And this matter, we have presented it to Provincial Treasury, and in the past we found alternative ways to bridge that gap, as it were, through our own revenue, but we no longer are able to do that now, which is why we called on our Provincial Treasury to make sure that our compensation of employees is fully funded. And they were only able to fund us for the first year of the MTEP. And they gave us an assurance and commitment that, given the state of the province announcement by the Premier, given the announcement in the state of the province by the Premier that there would be an amalgamation or merger of the human settlements components of public works, that they would await for that process before they can confirm funding our structure or our compensation of employees fully for the outer years. So we are waiting with bated breath to see that happening, and I am confident that they will certainly come to the party to ensure that our compensation of employees is funded fully, because if it's not, member, as you've rightfully pointed out, it would mean that we would need to shed some of the employees. And given the fact that there is no mechanism in government currently to deal with such matters, I do think that our provincial treasury would need to come to the party to ensure that we fully funded. And that is why, Member Maran, therefore, we could not take up interns, given the fact that there's current shortage in terms of our own allocation to cover for the compensation of employees for our permanent staff and contractual staff in terms of the commitment. So we had to manage the headcount, and that is precisely why we could not appoint new interns for this financial year. But for other questions, I will request the CFO to then just respond. Thanks, Member.
Thank you, Acting HOD. Thank you, Chairperson. If you don't mind, I'm going to work through the document and answer all the questions that will not be in the same order sequence that the members were asking it. Just on the 2.45 increase in our allocation, it's actually a 4.8% increase. It's still very low. There was an additional amount of 53 million in the adjustments budget that doesn't carry through to the new financial year. So that is the reason for a very small increase of only 2.4% to our budgets. The acting HOD has already discussed the COE, and that is the commitment that we've got. We've got a ceiling of 240 million rand for COE as determined by the Provincial Treasury, and we are working towards that. It only includes the 1.5% pay progression or increase that they allowed us, and also all the non-pensionable back pay. There was no further provisions made for further increases. And if there's anything coming from the salary negotiations, it is a huge risk for not only this department, but also for the province as a whole. On the decrease in the goods and services, there was a couple of ad hoc increases. If I can take you to page 357, there was minor assets that was once off, and that amount of nearly 2 million rand that we spent in the 21-22 financial year is directly linked to the renovations of the ground floor as part of the modernization process, and all the furniture and other equipment for the rental housing tribunal, and the help desk is included in that amount. It's not carrying through to the next year. There's a steep decrease in audit costs. The audit cost last year was exceptionally high because of all the issues that was raised and additional work that was performed. The audit was only finished in October 21, on the 21st of October 21, and not by the end of July as in the past, so that it attracted extra cost. And we, for this year, we bring it back to the baseline, the normal cost. Then on communication, last year it's also coming down. A lot of people were still working from home. That did attract some additional cost in terms of cell phone costs, data, and so forth. So there's a steep decrease there as well. And computer services is also coming down, and that is also linked to the working from home. Then on fleet services, we are relooking at our kilometers that we're driving. There's less projects in the future, but bigger projects, and it's part of our cost containment measures that we will curb on those unnecessary driving of the vehicles. Then the issue of the transfers to municipalities, that's going down so big. In 21-22, the ISUPG grant was included in the transfers to the municipalities. It's subsequently all the projects that we do on behalf of municipalities, we put it under the funds retained. If you look at the total amounts, it's coming to the same, but we will not transfer the money to the municipalities, but we will implement it ourselves where necessary. On program 4, the big increase in administration, that includes 2 new interventions, the title deed restoration grant, that's not funded from the HSDG anymore. In the past, we funded it from OPSCEP. That was under program 3. Now it's funded from our own allocation, and there's an amount of 11.129 million has been allocated there. There's also an amount of 3.4 million that we're transferring to the Breeda Valley municipality for them, in order for them to do the necessary maintenance to those properties, the flats that we're going to transfer to them. That's in terms of the Act, and we don't want to give them dilapidated properties, and we are putting them in the position to do the necessary maintenance on that. That's part of the agreement with the municipality. Then the high spending on consultants. Every year we make provision for consultants as soon as the project has been approved, and the cost incurred through consultants, that's then capitalized, but we make enough provision for those consultants. It's all consultants in the built environment, and we're talking about planners, engineers, quantity surveyors, project management, and so on. And the amount of money of about 30 million allocated to consultants for assisting us in driving our 2.2 billion rand is then capitalized as and when those projects has been approved. Chairperson, I think that is all the questions relating to the finances. Thank you.
Oh, my mic was off. Did you hear me, members? Member America, Member Maran, Member Andrikas, over to you, honorable members, in that order.
Thank you, Chair. We hear you now. Thank you, Ms. Maisile, for responding to my questions. But it's just one follow-up with regard to the question relating to the upgrading of informal settlements. Being cognizant of the complexities involved with the implementation of that particular target, having the 50 settlements being upgraded as an annual target, I'm concerned in terms of our role as oversight committee to monitor the progress with regard to the rollout of those upgrades. Are we then, at least, be able to be provided with a quarterly progress report as to the implementation of that particular target. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Member Maran.
Thanks, Chairperson. In a way, the Honourable America have covered me in terms of the upgrading of the informal settlements and this financial year, the target of 50. We have heard, for instance, earlier when the MEC have spoken, saying that over the last year or two, that informal settlements have doubled, Chair, and I'm not sure how we're going to deal with this particularly, because there will be a backlog, and how we will deal with the upgrading in informal settlements as we are moving forward. So it's not a question; it's just a concern that we remain at 50, and even when we are saying that those informal settlements have doubled, we still remain at 50, and how are we going to deal with it as we are moving forward? Thanks.
Thank you, Member Andrikas.
Thank you, Chair. Can I again draw members and officials' attention to page 340, again on that almost first line of table 8.2, compensation of employees. Now, we've had this explanation, and our Chief Financial Officer indicated that the department will be restricted this year by Provincial Treasury to 240 million rand for the compensation of employees. Now, what I find very strange is that for the next year, the compensation will only be 170 million, and the year thereafter also only 170 million. This seems to me to about, a 30% reduction in salaries, which we can, in terms of public service staff regulations, can only be achieved if a third of the employees are asked to leave. Now, how on earth can we believe those figures on page 340? What is going to happen to the department to be able to achieve such an enormous saving in terms of the compensation of employees? Then, Chair, perhaps the CFO wouldn't mind to just help us on the last, on page 346. There's a table 921, a summary of payments and estimates by economic classification. And in the past, there have been small transfers there, but it seems to me for this current financial year, there is no transfers or anything like that is being envisaged. So which entities will now forfeit those amounts that in the past were transferred to them? And then I think the same figures or, omission we also find in table A1 on page 355, where again there has been in the past some loan repayments and recovery of previous year's expenditure, but for this budget year there's been zero in terms of loan repayments and recovery of previous year's expenditure. Perhaps if we could just get an explanation for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think from my side on the upgrading of informal settlement, and we appreciate that upgrading of 50, which it will sort of give the decent living conditions. But then what after that? Because for the past years, let me make an example where I come from, Citrazar. We had an upgrading of informal settlement 2012, 2013. And when you go there, you have the ambulance workers, you have the nurses, you have. Now, what's going to happen after? Because they don't qualify. Yes, the fleece is coming, but the municipalities, as you talk to them, to say that we have a lot of people that can build for themselves, but there's no policy or anything that empowers the municipalities to say to those people, what is it that can happen? Do you plan. And I know Western Cape, we need to shine about being innovative in some of the things that we do that are different to any other provinces. Are you foreseeing the department that you'll do something that can empower those people that are staying there to say, now we are going to build for ourselves, because we cannot create the dependency from the informal settlements to the government all the time. There need to be something that we implement to make sure that we get those who are staying there that can build for themselves to say, now, at least I've got the title deed for that plot that has been allocated for me that I can also build for myself. Is that going to happen, or we are going to increase upgrading of the informal settlements that next stage will be about 100, and we'll say, yes, as a standing committee, well done to 100 informal settlements, but what after that? Over to you, Minister.
Okay. Madam Chair, before I hand over to my acting HOD, and let me first start with your last question and comment. Look, part of this provincial government's approach is that when we do planning and implementation, we utilize data at our disposal. So as much as there's been a doubling of informal settlements, the oldest informal settlement is 38 years old, and the latest one is probably 3 weeks old, depending on where the invasion has successfully occurred, to be quite honest. So when my HOD earlier made comment that, we've identified the 50 that we can actually upgrade, it's because we have the data to back that. So people that believe by invading land, they will suddenly see this department reacting. It's not the way it works. The thing of queue jumping, we will not allow. Why is it that somebody must still live in informality for 38 years while you invade land 3 weeks and now suddenly you demand our attention and service? That is not the way life works. So, and that leads me to answer your question of what about those like in Citrusdal? Madam Chair, 60% of everything that we do is stuck at local government level. We engage the municipality, we ask them to look at their pipeline, they do planning approvals and. So every year you would be aware, it's 2019, I've been doing district outreaches where I engage a district municipality, I engage the mayors, and Pila and the team does the administration. And, we will now further expand that outreach this year because we do want to see a shift at local government level. They also need to now wake up to the reality that it can't be business as usual, even for them, which means the fact that the National Department in 2020 announced the priority list of who will get a top structure is already indicative that money into the future is going to get less, and we need to adapt. As the Western Cape, we have been doing that for many years. Since 2017, I was informed of upgrading our informal settlements, but the biggest obstacle in many times is those that do earn more than 3,500, yet prior to the delinking announcement could never afford a housing opportunity. And that leads me to what is commonly called the Site and Services Plan. You would recall the previous Minister Lindiwe Sisulu announced the rapid land release program, which as the Western Cape we actually support, as long as it's done in a conducive and structured manner and it assists us to reach our objectives. Now, under the umbrella of affordable housing, which is something which I didn't touch on in my opening remark, is also sites and services. But how we will implement that is exactly what Pila and the team are busy working on. So not to let the cat out of the bag yet, Madam Chair, we are working on a plan, a structured plan, a rollout plan, how we are going to address this. But this is why I actually request the Standing Committee's assistance. 60% of every housing planning or project that's planned comes from the municipalities. Our councillors and council need to understand that they drive the process of where their towns are going, not the municipal administration. And we also need to, with your assistance, see a mind shift of just talking about building top structures when it's a reality that the bulk infrastructure does not exist across our municipalities. They need to change their own process. And that is why I call on your assistance, please, Madam Chair, because local government is currently in their IDP and budget process. If there's still a time to influence where they are heading, because that feeds into their business plan, which we engage them on later in the year once I go visit these districts and municipalities. And I will invite the Standing Committee to accompany me on that as well, Madam Chair, because we are going to expand the way we do that. We envision to unpack the way that the linking of this will work. We will unpack what affordable housing means in the Western Cape and all of the products which we will seek to accelerate, focusing on those teachers, on those nurses, even on the general worker who makes tea in your office. They earn more than 3,500 rand. How can we assist them? But how can we assist them sustainably? And what the role of local government is for us to reach our objective. Madam Chair, so I've answered Member Marion in terms of the backlog. That's why we have a data approach of 15 formal settlements in terms of the planning implementation per year. Member Andrikas, in terms of the COE in the outer years, Madam Chair, once again, when I look at this in the department, we need to understand with the refresh discussion happening of the provincial government, we did get a commitment from Provincial Treasury, dependent on where the process of consultation is, that by the adjustment appropriation later on this year, should they now need to fund another outer year, then they will do that formal announcement. So let's wait and see what happens, how the consultation progresses during the year. That is why the current version, you will see a reduction, but should the need arise and Provincial Treasury will step up and they will, like they've done now for the first time, actually cover our shortfall in COE, because by doing that, they're actually opening up that we can, for the first time, use our own funding to actually accelerate our objectives as the Western Cape government. And you would recall that we have an asset reserve fund, which is actually funded through our own income, through the sale of FLISP units, through the sale of service sites and so forth. And the reason for that is that we want to unlock affordable housing and to incentivize municipalities to actually start refocusing the way they envisage their town planning. Member Marin earlier spoke about integrated housing opportunities. I fully agree with that statement. But true housing integration can only happen when the local sphere of government steps up and works with us. That is why the way that we are planning our projects doesn't speak to only one modality of the housing or human settlements. That's why we are focusing on affordable housing, to ensure that we address all aspects of housing needs in our communities, because there is a diverse need and we need to address it effectively and efficiently, even in informal settlements, where the reality is that we need to address the backlog, yes. But why must I start with an informal settlement that's 3 weeks old versus an informal settlement in the city of Cape Town that's 38 years old? The priorities need to shift. For many years, we've been reactive. I made a commitment to the people of the Western Cape. I will be proactive and I will use the data at my disposal, but I cannot do that alone. It's time that the standing committee works with us, that we get our councillors to work with us, because they need to step up and step into proper accountability, because that is what is expected of me, that is expected of my HOD and my CFO and my entire executive team and all my 400 plus staff across the province. But now we can only do this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Maran, your hand, is it a legacy hand or
No,
you have a follow-up?
It's a follow-up, Chair, and it will be my last on this particular issue, Chair. Chair, maybe the way how we put our question is not wrong, but makes it difficult basically for a proper response, because I would have loved the MEC when it responds to, and I've heard they have said that in their planning, they plan to do 50 a year. But we have seen, Chair, when it comes to to human settlements and the projects and the pipelines, housing projects in the pipeline, is that many of those monies, municipalities fail to spend those monies and it goes back to provincial treasury. But also then in a way to channel those monies to projects that are ready for implementation. I wanted to hear the MEC said, yes, although we are planning to do 50 a year, in terms of our pipeline, there's another 25. So if municipalities sleep on the job and not wake up to the reality and not able to spend those monies on those informal settlements, we are ready basically to channel those monies to another 25 that are ready in terms of for implementation in terms of our pipeline. I would have thought that the MEC will respond in such a way, but I have not. If I misunderstood, my apologies. Thanks.
Okay, Minister.
Now, Madam Chair, like I said, I love the insightful questions that we are getting focused on our budget. Madam Chair, I'll use a practical example. In 2019, when I became the provincial minister, I said if a municipality does not perform in terms of the HSDG grant in the adjustment budget, we shift the funding to a municipality that actually does perform. Case in example is Langeberg, where I was lambasted by the standing committee for why is it only 2 million rand? And yet, further down the line, when we adjusted it because certain aspects at the Langebort municipality was not ready for the full implementation phase. But yet, during consultation during the year, when we assisted them, they said, look, we are ready, we can actually implement now. And now it's we adjusted their budget upwards, and I didn't see anybody thanking us for that. But case may be, Madam Chair, so that's an example of we shifting money, but we also can't budget for something that will never happen. We don't give money back, Member Marin. We internally, because we have get an adjustment period, we also need to adjust our business plans and submit to national to say, look, at the beginning of our financial year, the X number of projects we thought would be at some stage of readiness. Sadly, we have to now adjust to other regions in the province or to specific projects to accelerate that, because I must compliment certain municipalities that have the absorptive capacity to actually take more money and accelerate the delivery of opportunities, which those that don't have that capacity, we take the money. Now, the ISUPG grant was only announced last year, mid-year through the year. So what we do, Member Marin, once again, we now have a full cycle to actually see how this grant will actually perform. I must say that if a municipality, the similar principle that we use with the HSDG grant, if a municipality can't show to us that they can spend the money, but municipality X does show, we will shift the money. So I can't tell you if it's going to be 10 projects or 25 projects. That's all dependent on how we monitor during the course of this year, prior to the adjustment to appropriation later in the year. Then you will see how many projects are being shifted and who will get more money. So I hope that properly answers your question, Member Marin, and I've expanded now to ensure there's clarity on that point as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Member August.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm learning a lot. As the first two meetings was more site visits. But I want to respond, and I've been covered with a lot of questions by the previous members asking their questions. I want to ask the Minister, and Honourable Moran also touched on it, this quarterly report, that only on the fourth quarter we'll know how far the projects are. That is concerning. But I'm listening to the Minister now saying that, and I understand how the process works, where if a municipality was not able to implement its specific project, you shift funding because you need to spend your funding within that financial year. That I understand fully. My problem is that that specific municipality that does not have the capacity to do so, it is the communities that are suffering because of officials not being able to do whatever they're supposed to do. My question is to the department, how do we take that municipality's hand? How do we strengthen them? How do we ensure that whatever project they have, that you walk the project with them for the 12 months to ensure that we do deliver on that specific, that we don't have to divert funds to other municipalities that might have the capacity as with their officials to be able to implement. But smaller municipalities that doesn't have it, we are actually making the community suffer more. Can you perhaps speak a little bit more on that and how you as a department or this department take the hands of that municipality? Thank you.
Before you come in, Minister, I think the question more from me before the question, it will be, I think on our program, parliamentary program, the standing committee will be engaging with the district. I think it's one of the things that we have identified, as you mentioned, to engage with the councillors to have an understanding that decisions that they take within the council chambers, it's what will be the motivation for some of the times to make sure that the projects they get to be unlocked, and understanding the metrics of which we will depend on the department itself to give us the information of what are the challenges as we implement the projects. Already that is on our parliamentary program to make sure we engage with the municipalities. Now, why that is what's happening is that we went to Saldanha. They have only about your 50-year-old. That's the older people that they have in the municipalities. Then you go to Breedeville, you get an 80 and an 89-year-old. Now you allocate the funds to those municipalities and you follow the concept of the metrics of the municipality readiness. And then you have the priority list that you say the older has to be the ones that you prioritize within the department. Now, that balance, how do you get that balance correct? Because you'll allocate Saldanha because the capacity is there for the municipality to say, oh, we tick the boxes as you say we are ready for the implementing the project. But you have a municipality that has a 89-year-old that is waiting, and maybe, just maybe, there's no capacity in that municipality, and you can see it from the department. Now, what extra thing do you do, like member August have asked, to make sure that the municipalities that have the elderly people to an extent of about 80-year or 89 or even the 70 get to be prioritized with the department, making sure that they go down there to help? And I'm asking this because, I mean, this conversation we have been having for, I don't know for how many years. Fortunately, I'm the chair the second term. I've been having this conversation with the department. Now I'm almost 10 years in this chair, talking that language. So what extra thing that is different that the department is going to do for this financial year to make sure that as the standing committee, we are going to go to engage. But again, at the end of the day, it has to be department and the municipality to say, how do we really make sure that we have our Saldanas in each and every municipality, that they, on their database, you have only up to the 50-year-olds. That's my question to you, Minister.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. And once again, I do welcome these questions. I will just ask my HOD, or acting HOD, to address your concern regarding the quarterly report in terms of the informal settlement upgrading. Because I think Member America also asked that question, and how from a departmental side we can still ensure that you exercise your monitoring and oversight capacity over how we spend the ISUPG in terms of the informal settlements. I'll just so they can unpack that a bit more, because it's not like we're just going to spend money in the last quarter, which I believe I can gather is the idea the Standing Committee is getting. It's totally not like that. Madam Chair, also then in terms of, you know, you used the example of Saldanha Bay versus Breda Valley, which, like I said, you have been here for nearly 10 years, and we do applaud you. At least you haven't got grey yet, so congratulations. So how do we see, or do we envisage to deal with that, Madam Chair? Madam Chair, but just to link on to that, and I will ask that the administration also answers that. More of all the municipalities in the Western Cape, the bulk of them have got 40 to 50% new councillors. And your hair will raise if you see the questions I must answer via WhatsApp and inbox and Facebook from councillors, not even the community. Sometimes community members know more than new councillors, to be quite honest. So what I have asked Nathan and our communications team to do, Madam Chair, is actually to, instead of doing, when I do my outreach to do slideshows, they've actually drawn an infographic which explains the entire cycle of human settlements. Your role as council, you know, from planning to the inception to the day we hand over keys, which will almost be like a A3 handbook for councillors to use, because many a times, because 60% of our job is stuck in council, and if council does things wrong, then they tend to point the finger to the minister and the acting HOD. So just to address that one part, which leads me now to Member August's question regarding from our side, instead of shifting money. Member August, you will note that when I open my opening remarks and comments thereafter, I focused on also not just what I'm doing, but what the Department of Local Government is doing in terms of capacitation, in terms of their budget, which was announced yesterday. And some of that funding will obviously go to technical capacitation, which is a big concern. There's a lack of engineers, there's a lack of planners, and. So from our department side, what we do various things. We don't just tell you, look, we're going to take your money. Where we do get requests for assistance from local governments or municipalities, as far as is possible within our budgetary constraints, which we also experience, we do assist them. In certain municipalities, we've even seconded staff, like to your Oudtshoorn and your Knysna in the past, at our cost, to assist them to unlock the housing opportunities and reshape their business plans, because some municipalities' plans just didn't make sense to us. The problem is where there is instability in council. Sometimes it influences instability in administration, and to such an extent that 2 of our resources, believe it or not, was given back to us. The same municipalities, Oudtshoorn and Knysna, when in the past they welcomed it, and yet today they are back at square one. So it's not that we are unwilling to assist local municipalities. It's, you know, when they step up and they tell us and they ask for assistance. And I mean, there are even some of our bigger municipalities that ask for assistance, and we do give it to them to capacitate them, but as a last port of call, because if you can see by mid-year or early in the third quarter, that look here clearly, municipality X is never going to spend by the end of March. Then we need to make a judgment call. And before we do that call, I remember August, we actually administratively engage the administration through my acting HOD. I engaged the mayor and the team to say, look, guys, please step up. You are putting your expenditure at risk, or that specific region at risk. Please, how can you assist us in addressing this? Acting HOD?
Thanks, Chairperson and members. Yes, Member America, indeed, we will provide quarterly reports to the committee. And I think what we will do, instead of just presenting whether we've met the target or not, or simply saying that it's a quarterly target, we will add a section to highlight just progress so that it just gives comfort and assurance to the committee that there is work that is currently being done towards achieving that annual target. So we will certainly incorporate that. And just to add, Member Moran, on the issue that Minister responded to, another constraint for us is just the issue of bulk infrastructure. As part of the assessment and analysis that was done by the team across the province, we're finding that the issue of lack of bulk infrastructure is a big challenge for us. Whilst the grant allows us to use a certain percentage to assist municipality to augment their budgets and upgrade the infrastructure, we're finding that the misalignment in terms of the upgrading and the allocation of the AMIG grant and the upgrading of this settlement remains a problem, and we have included it in our communication, and we engage with them on a monthly basis to just make sure that there is better alignment when it comes to their allocation, because whilst we may be ready to tackle the next set of 50 informal settlements, it's heavily reliant and dependent on the availability of the bulk infrastructure. But we're doing whatever we can to assist the municipalities with the limited resources that we have to at least see that we're improving the living conditions within these informal settlements. I think just very quickly, Member Van Westhuizen, I think you are spot on in terms of highlighting the challenges it relates to COE. Yes, it means that if Provincial Treasury does not come to the party in terms of the COE budget for the outer years, effectively a third of our staff, if I may put it in simple terms, would need to be laid off. And I think this risk I did communicate to Provincial Treasury, and I also highlighted that even within the context of the new department, it does not remove that liability, because we're talking about warm bodies, we're talking about people that are already occupying certain positions. Hence, the commitment was given by them that before we conclude the budgeting cycle for the 2023 MTEF, they would have resolved this issue. And I think I'm giving a commitment, Chairperson, that at our third quarter reporting to the standing committee, I will update the committee in terms of where we at in relation to the COE, because that is the biggest risk, that emerging risk that we've identified as a department, given the fact that it remains a liability whether we merge or not. But Provincial Treasury, as Minister has indicated, they've given us a commitment that this will be resolved by the third quarter of this financial year as we go into the next budgeting cycle. And in the event that the refresh process is not concluded by then through the adjustment process, they would then make sure that they make the necessary funding available. And I will certainly keep the committee informed in that regard. On the capacity of municipalities, I think Minister has responded to that, but over and above that, Member August, we are looking at appointing professional resource teams over and above the fact that you will see in the infographics, we've set a target of 26 where we're providing technical support to municipalities. That includes walking the walk with them, actually assisting them with compiling their applications. But over and above that, we're saying we are looking at appointing professional resource teams. This will be a group of consultants that will be dedicated to specific municipalities as and when we see that the need arises for us to do that, with the hope that, and with those appointments, we also add a clause of skills transfer to make sure that when we pull the professional resource teams, the municipalities are still able to stand on their 2 feet. So we will be intensifying our support insofar as that is concerned. And then on the implementation side, linked to the professional resource team aspect of it, we're also looking at utilizing our framework, our database of contractors, and so that where municipalities are struggling in terms of the supply chain management processes, we will then be able to appoint on behalf of the municipality, at least to assist them so that they do not lose the funding that's earmarked for that particular municipality. Because we do understand the point that you're raising, Chairperson, that just because a particular municipality does not have capacity, it does not mean that they need to be disadvantaged. So we do look at that holistically before we take any funding away from that particular municipality. I do think that we've covered all the follow-up questions, Chairperson. I'm not sure if there's anything that we have missed out.
Thank you, Chairperson. There was the one question on the 61,000 rand for Cape Craft and Design. It's on page 341, Honourable Member. That was just the finishing off of a research work that we had with them for a period of 3 years. In total, we spent 2,461 on them. The other amount of 130,000 rand was in response to grief gratuities that has been classified as transfers to households. We did indicate in our budget decisions the issue of the unsustainable budget as highlighted by the Minister and the Acting HOD, and also we also highlighted that all the revenue will now go to the Asset Finance Reserve, and that's why those blockers are empty. And we have been funded by Treasury for that, and while they are sorting out the rest of the outer years. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Mepila.
Thanks, Chairperson. There's one question that you ask, what is our plan on the upgrading of informal settlements? One of the research work that we'll be conducting actually will be looking at the support that we can provide to beneficiaries in terms of service sites. And we're actually looking at expanding on our land release program to make sure that we release the service site, and we're also exploring now a concept of plot and plan. So that when we release that service site to that nurse or policeman, it also is accompanied by a plan. But I will ask Camilla to just add very, very briefly and expand on that, because it also relates to the question that was asked earlier in terms of rolling out of the FLISP. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, so as the HOD mentioned, one of our research projects specifically this year will be geared towards supporting beneficiaries who've received a service site to help them build a top structure, and looking at what inhibits that and what we need to put in place to counter that. Our affordable housing team and ministers already spoken to the phased rollout of the delinking FLISP, the real name, which is Help Me Buy a Home, and then it's called Expanded FLISP as well. But part of that, one of the aspects of that, or one of the phases would be incremental development through FLISP. So the policy is going to enable it, but the implementation guidelines for how that will happen isn't clear yet. And that's where the phased input will come in as well. So that's one of the actions. If I can take this opportunity, there were one or two questions that weren't asked answered in the first round, if I can go there, and I'll just link it to the delinking of FLISP. So one of the questions one of the members asked was about, is there a waiting list for unsecured lending in terms of delinking FLISP? There isn't at this stage. What will happen is that there will be certain requirements. For example, if the banks are no longer involved, who's going to value that property? If the banks are no longer involved, how are we going to ensure value for money if we're going to provide those subsidies? So with unsecured lending, there'll be additional criteria that a person will need to present in order to qualify for our option. And that is what ministers indicated we will communicate, and the acting HOD before the end of this year. The team is busy working on that already. The one question that was asked in terms of title deeds, I think by Member van der Westhuizen is spot on. We can put lots of processes in place to fix up the backlog of title deeds, but if we don't put the process in place to remedy what's currently happening in creating that backlog, all we're going to do is grow the backlog. So part of the process that we have in place now, we've established a little team in the department. We've now got a clear way or clear process as per the standing committee's request, an operational plan for getting through the backlog, which we hopefully will present to the standing committee or provide to the standing committee in the next week or two. And then the standing committee can invite us to talk to that operational plan if need be. That will focus on the backlog. What we do need to do is change the process at a municipal level when a house is actually handed over. We've seen, for example, you go back a week later and that person is gone, but that person hasn't signed an offer to purchase. And 2 months later, that house has been sold twice already. So how do we do a basic administration function of ensuring that when a beneficiary signs the happy letter, he immediately signs whatever document he needs to so that we can facilitate transfer. So those processes will be built in as we continue so that we begin to mitigate the acceleration of a backlog we're trying to mitigate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Through your indulgence, members, I think we are going to take a break from 11 and then we will reconvene. Can we do 10 minutes or 15 minutes? Members?
15.
With me,
Chair, Chair, if I may ask,
Yeah.
whether there will be further engagement with the department and after the break, if not, and then we can wrap up with the department and then we can take the break and then continue with the committee's work. I don't know. Just asking. Thank you.
Okay. The one voice says break now. The other one says further engagement. I need a decider.
Chair, I fully agree with the Honourable America. If there will be no further engagements with the department or any questions asked, maybe you can excuse them and us having our.
So mine, since we are here in person, is we take a break now and we'll come back after 15 minutes or 10. Remember, August? How many minutes?
15 minutes.
15 minutes for
15.
those who are in-house. Those who are at home visually, you are saying we must continue. It's not possible, honorable members. We are going to take 15 minutes. We'll adjourn now and come back 11:15. Thank you very much, honorable members. See you in 15 minutes.
Coming back after 15 minutes?
Yes, we are engaging after that. Thank you very much, Minister. I always wondered about this one. If the matrix talk to also the readiness in talk to the infrastructure, why sometimes you build the houses without the infrastructure being ready in the city that you have the invasion? Or there's something that I'm missing from there? Did one of the members, member Smith, is you that is trying to get my attention?
The echo is actually getting much worse.
Worse
by
now.
side.
Okay,
We cannot hear you.
Okay,
I think,
it's
Chair,
here. Let's.
Chair, I think that you're speaking on a laptop that is log on to the system on Teams, so that it will work now. We speak through the mic.
Can't hear you, Chair. Can't hear you.
Okay, let's try again. The echo is still. Because I don't know. For now, my questions, I did ask my questions. The department had me. Let's hear them. If they don't have an echo, then they can continue answering while the IT attends to the problem.
It's loud and clear now, Chair.
It's loud and clear now. There's no echo,
Yes.
ne?
No echo.
Okay. Let's listen to the responses then.
Okay, Madam Chair, once again, thank you for your two questions. I just need to put on record, as much as the Executive Authority I account at MINMIC for underspending of USDG, I do not draw up, I do not have an input, I do not look at the city's USDG grant. As you are aware, only metros receive the Urban Settlement Development Grant. But the sad reality is when it comes to taking the whipping, guess who takes the whipping? Unnecessary at times. I don't mind doing that. It comes with a package of being a leader. You must take the whipping. And what makes it so unique in the city of Cape Town is that we do projects that's funded through HSDG, and the city does projects that are funded through USDG and HSDG, because they also get an allocation from my side, which is at least one component where, as the executive, together with my acting HDN team, we do have a fair say in terms of the HSDG grant projects. What I've learned since 2019, and I'll be very honest, Honourable Chairperson and committee members, is that even in our own projects in the city of Cape Town boundaries, unless we don't use our own funding, some of our projects will always have budget or bulk constraints. In terms of, and I've tried to assess, but why is the misalignment of the USDG also an issue? And like I said, this is not the only province where this is happening. I need to emphasize that. The problem is in terms of how the USDG grant is structured. It does not only focus on human settlements. When you look at the way the city's budget is structured, there's the human settlements component, there's the electricity component, there's the sewage component. So you have one grant that's split into various directorates in the city of Cape Town, because the pure human settlements component literally almost spends close to 100% every year. It's the other directorates where that's not coming to the party. Now, I can't, because I've never served in the city of Cape Town. I only engage them at an executive level. But what I have, and under the new mayor, I have started engaging him, saying, look, we need to see better alignment in terms of your USDG expenditure and the HSDG expenditure in your municipal jurisdiction. So we will see in the new financial year how that plays itself out, Madam Chair. But when a metro gives money back, it's because they can't spend it. And the way that municipal finances is structured, unlike at the provincial government, remember, certain things you can do variants at local government, certain things you cannot. And in the metro, the rules of how the MFMA is implemented is even more stricter because of the grading of a metro. And that is the bit of understanding I have of a metro's finances, to be quite honest. Normal local governments, I can unpack it for you quite easily. I will ask that my acting HOD just touch on that as well from the administrative component to answer you fully, Madam Chair, because yes, we are trying to work a lot closer because we are also impacted where infrastructure is an issue. But taking cognizance of what's been happening over the last few weeks in the city, the standing committee also needs to be sensitized that we do see theft and damage to cities' infrastructure. Sewage plants, pipes, electricity, we have seen this. And when we as a provincial government say for you, what we deliver as human settlements as a provincial department, we actually ask that the community start taking ownership. Government can't keep on doing everything for the community. They need to take ownership because this is taxpayers' money being utilized to enhance the quality of our people's lives. But if we develop within a specific community and they do not even take ownership, proper ownership, and allow vandalism of state assets, it's assets to improve the quality of their lives. And the city of Cape Town is suffering under that because it's millions and millions of rand that they've reported of damages to infrastructure, which impacts human settlements sadly on their side, on our side. Think you
Thanks, Minister. Just to pick up on what Minister was saying, Chair, just as an indication, the city's human settlements component only gets about 46% of the billion plus that the city gets. The rest is split amongst the other directorates. And whatever is surrendered back to National Treasury is usually from those components. Now we have raised the issue at our MINMEC to say that perhaps as a sector, human settlements, we need to have a say on what happens with the money that's surrendered by cities before it's lost to National Treasury. But given the scheduling of the grant and the conditions that are attached to it, saying that National Treasury transfers it straight to the city, I think it would require more robust engagements between all the role players to effect that change. But it's work in progress, and we will continue to raise that very sharply because whatever is lost back to Treasury, we don't necessarily get it back in the next year. But insofar as the 46% is concerned that the Human Settlements Directorate gets, we do have a protocol arrangement or an agreement that we've signed with them, and it sets out the process that we would follow in terms of applying for funding to support the projects that we implement. And we have now just also recently reinstated the engagements, the bilaterals with the city, where we've agreed that we will issue them with a prioritized list of where we wanting the investment in terms of bulk infrastructure to go so that it unlocks the projects that we are developing with the city or jointly or with our other role players. We could do more, obviously, with the additional funding. In actual fact, our argument is that 46% allocation to cities human settlements should actually be increased, given the fact that in the first instance, it was top sliced from our own human settlements grant nationally to specifically focus on unlocking human settlements project. But it's work in progress. We engage with them, and there is that cooperation. In the past, there was some sort of like disagreements on one or two things, but now we are trying to realign. In actual fact, I think we are on the right path now, given the commitment that they gave to us recently, that they would now prioritize the USDG based on the submission that we've given to them.
Thank you very much. And I think the last two, it will be any contingency measures for the Sheikh family, because that's one of the nightmare of the department. That is there any involvement, maybe the intelligence of the police, to say how do we cut this criminality factor that is costing the department a huge amount of the percentage of the budget? And the second one, it will be the inclusionary housing framework. Are we motivating it into the municipalities, or is still the ideology that is going to be introduced to the municipalities to have a look at that. And if it's already there, which municipality has implemented that maybe as we do an oversight, we can see the idea of the inclusionary housing. What does it, to engage with that municipality to say, what does it engage? What does it, how does it benefit the broader communities within those municipalities or on that specific town? But to you, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as a member of the legislature, I'll respond from that perspective, and I'll ask the department in terms of the implementers of our legislatorial duties and functions in terms of the acts and the frameworks which we craft for the province to respond in that regard. Now, Madam Chair, you would recall that between my department and the Department of Development Planning at Local Government, Minister Provincial and I, the inclusionary housing policy framework, which was out for public comment, and that focuses more on the planning aspect, not so much the implementation. And I need to put that on record because we need to understand when the architects of apartheid designed apartheid, it all started with how they planned the way that settlement development would occur. They planned who will stay where, even before the houses and the subterranean infrastructure was built. Now, obviously, this seeks to address that spatial planning legacy by focusing more on inclusionary housing. Now, inclusionary housing is encapsulated in how we do future planning, how we envision to break down the barriers of the past by creating an inclusive future for all our citizens, irrespective of your gender, race, sexual orientation, or the color of your skin. It all starts with planning. Now, obviously, once that inclusionary housing policy framework becomes a formal document that will be processed through the legislature, then we start saying our local government needs to now adapt it into their planning processes. Because like I said, 60% of everything that my department do ultimately is locked in local government. They have their spatial development frameworks or the SDFs. They determine the boundaries of what gets built where. And you would have picked up a lot of reference from your side and my side, and even from the acting HOD side, has been about local government, the inadequacies, and also where they need assistance. And planning is a huge part of that, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, in terms of shack farming, how I wish this provincial government actually had their own police. Because you talk about police intelligence, to be quite honest, let me not go further into that, it's not my portfolio. Let's just say there's a lack of it, for the lack of a better word. Madam Chair, shack farming, once again, people do shack farming in communities. Communities see these structures being erected. And I'll take a practical example. When the Deputy Minister and I visited Imizamieto last year with MMC Boy, almost all the doors where the Deputy Minister knocked on the day before were not even people from South Africa. They were paying rent to some unknown individual who seemingly a ghost in the city of Cape Town. And my response at that stage, and it remains the same today, but it's in your community. Why don't you stand up, stand together within the rule of law and prevent shack farming in your areas? Because people are saying government is failing in terms of housing delivery, but you can throw the ball back to the same community. Why are you allowing shack farming? Why are you allowing invasions at the expense of your future settlement planning? Thank you, Madam Chair. Anything you do?
Thanks, Minister. I think Chair Minister has covered it. Just to add, the only way that we've been able to enforce the issue of shack farming is through an upgrading process. Once we're going into a settlement to start upgrading, we have to enumerate and collect data, and that's when we pick up that people are actually shack farming, and in those cases we then able to exclude them from the program. In actual fact, that's exactly what happened after the fires in Imizamieto. There were about 1,300 structures that burned down. When we, together with the City of Cape Town, went in to assist the families, we ended up only assisting 800. And the reason why we did not assist the full 1,300 is precisely because we picked up that there was shack farming. So in terms of enforceability, there's little that we can do, but in the upgrading process, we're then able to at least make sure that we're focusing on those that truly deserve to be accommodated as part of the upgrading process.
Thank you very much. I think that was the last question from me, members. Going once, twice. Member Maran.
Yeah,
Over
thanks.
to you. Sam.
Thanks, Chair, and my apologies because I wanted to ask this question earlier when the MEC, in terms of infrastructure, pointed out that the department had fully paid for the circle on the R62. Last week, Chair, if you can remember, the bridge as you enter Zwelathemba township was basically affected by storm water that came down there, the river, and you could not enter the Zwelathemba area from that particular side. Then an entrance were made from the R62 over the railway line into Zwelathemba. Last week, Chair, when they tried to close that particular entrance because the bridge have now been repaired, restored to its old. The community basically protest and forced the municipality to open that entrance again. Was there any specific reason, MEC, why the circle was not linked towards Zwelathemba, making it basically a four-way direction into Zwelathemba, into Transact, and also in different directions on the R62? Was there any reasons why that particular circle was not extended into Zwelathemba? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pila.
I'm going to ask Prashant to respond. Thanks, Chair.
Sure. Thanks, Chairperson, honourable member. When the traffic circle at Transact was designed, there was a traffic impact analysis that was done. And what it said is basically that the service road that runs along the R62 needs to be kept in place. One, because the circle and the road itself doesn't accommodate for very large abnormal loads. It caters for normal abnormal loads where a person would give notice in advance. But if there's an unusually large truck, then the service road, especially the vehicles traveling in front of the truck, would need to be there in place. Therefore, the circle only goes three ways, on the R62 and into Transhex. Together with there's also a railway line on the other side of the track. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Maran, legacy on you, and
It's actually a legacy, and Chair, I'm going to allow it. But just for the information of the department is that there is now a new entrance on the R62, just say like a kilometer further on the R62. It was supposed to be temporary. It seems now that the community of Zwelathemba wants it to be permanent because they have basically forced the municipality to keep that entrance open. I'm just raising it. That was basically my question. Why was there any other reason why it was not extended into? But thanks for the response.
thank you very much, Member Maran. I think they've noted that there's the new town planners in Zwelathemba, that there's a new road that has been implemented that I think they will note that, and it seems it's going to be permanent because I passed through that road a lot of time, and that is the most used road so far because of the bridge. And immediately if that bridge is going to fall off again, I agree with Member Maran, that is the only road that is going to allow the Zwelathemba community to access their area. So it has to go back again to the department, to both departments, to say how do they go about to make sure that that becomes permanent, because the municipality itself, I think with the Department of Transport, they made a way to show the municipality that in fact this can happen. So one way or another, it has to work for that community. And also as we talk integrating the communities, we have to integrate Transhex to the community of Zwelathemba, and that it will be something that helps them to to be able to access each other from the other side of the road. Members, I think that was the last question or last comment from Member Maran. And from before I conclude, Member August, any words? Okay. So from my side, I just want to say thank you very much from the department. And I say this all the time, this is the department that we call each other the Human Settlements family. And we don't say thank you to each other because out there, the communities, they don't see that we make a difference, because the more you build, the more you create the demand. And as the chair, I feel there need to be a time that we will be talking the language of how many jobs did we create for people to build themselves houses, rather than how many houses are we going to build. And that it will be empowering our communities, because like the department is saying that once they give beneficiary houses, come a week after, you find you spend about 162,000 to build a house, but it's been sold for 20,000. And that's the sad part of what this department is doing. And then the communities, they don't see that value because of sometimes they don't understand the cost. That is something that the community, the beneficiary education has to talk to them, to tell them how much did you spend to build those houses, so that they can have an understanding of the cost attached to their houses, because they feel because it's a free house, 20,000 is still a lot of money. They don't have an understanding of how much has been spent for them to have those 4 walls, to keep them safe and to give them the sense of ownership, and to just give them the dignity of showing something that is theirs. So, Minister, thank you very much. We'll be engaging with you quarterly to see your APP, if really is aligned to what you bring in, and the department also. Officials, we appreciate your engagement all the time and your contribution and the difference you make in our communities. I can be the only one that have to say thank you with my colleagues and the communities out there. Trust me, they don't give a lot of thank you unless they've got the title deeds. It's always when I hear thank you when you give them the title deeds. The houses, they still feel is your house. So make sure you deliver those title deeds so that you can get a lot of thank you. We need thank you after the COVID-19. So thank you very much. I think that we'll continue with the members and we can release you. And again, we'll see each other, Minister. Thanks. Any last words from you?
Thank you, Madam Chair, because I see you're limited for time, your deliberations. Madam Chair, from my side, I think I speak on behalf of the Ministry and the Department, the Acting HOD, our CFO, Chief Directors, but all our regional managers present. I want to thank you for this opportunity and for a very thorough engagement in unpacking of Vote 8. But I do want to leave you with a few pearls of thoughts as you're going to deliberate on our budget vote after this. A lot of emphasis have been placed through your questions and through our comments on the role of local government and the failures of local government and its impact on our ability to deliver. We've highlighted how we are seeking to assist new councillors through the infographic to understand human settlements better, but perhaps at some stage, Madam Chair, we will need to see a possible involvement between the two standing committees to influence that even more for us, please. Through the Asset Reserve Fund, we are trying to finance and unlocking affordable housing opportunities into the future. You can play a role there as you do your oversight visits and engagements, as well to encourage from your side as well, Honourable Chair and Standing Committee, that they started refocusing the way they see human settlements as local government, and we will assist them as far as humanly possible within the criteria which we've set. I do want to thank also from the ministry side, my head of ministry, but also my MLO and my private secretary, but Madam Chair, it's also my head of ministry's last session with the Standing Committee after 15 years in provincial government. She will be departing to a new province, so we are exporting our success story to another province. She started in this provincial government as an intern, and look where she is today. That's true empowerment done by this provincial government. So I do want to wish her well on behalf of the department and the ministry as well. And I thank her for the hard work and the role that she's played. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And from me also, I think her contribution that is not directly, we know from this side that behind all of you, you do have the support system behind you that can make you shine all the way. You might be engaging with us because we know there are people like her that are behind you that always make sure that things are happening. So congratulations for your new adventure. Because women settlements, if you are still going to the same portfolio, where you are going is just an adventure that doesn't stop. And we say this in our own corners, where we are planted, we grow. So that is the growth to you. Go there and shine and showcase what are we made of in Western Cape. So good luck. Thank you very much, Minister. Honorable members, with that being said, let's do the consideration and adoption of our draft committee report. I'll ask you, Miss, to flash it for us so that we don't have to meet again just to adopt and consider our report. Is that okay with you, members?
Fine with me, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Member Andrikas, I see your hand.
Yes, fine with me. Do we need to give Ms. Jones a few minutes to prepare the report?
Yes. Yes, we are going to give you a few minutes to do that on our, to flash it there. Okay, thank you very much, honorable members. It stands like this: the report of the Standing Committee on Human Settlements on Vote 8, Human Settlements in the Schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, B2 2022, dated the 15th March 22 as follows. The Standing Committee on Human Settlements, having deliberated on the subject of Vote 8, Human Settlements in the Schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, B2 2022, referred to the committee in accordance with Standing Rule 188, reports that it supports the vote or does not support the vote. So over to you, honorable members. I recognize Honorable Andrikas and Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. I propose that we as a committee support the vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will flash it so that I can read it again as is stand. Any second, Honorable America?
Thank you, Chair. I second the proposal by Honourable Van der Westhuizen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Maran, I recognize your hand.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, the Honourable Lily is in this meeting, but is not feeling well, and they've basically asked me to convey a message that we do not support this particular vote. And if our vote then becomes the minority vote, that it, in terms of Rule 90, Chair, say that it's a minority vote and then be captured in the report as such. Thank you.
Okay, I will put that in. Okay, so it will read this way. The Standing Committee on Human Settlements, having deliberated on the subject of Vote 8, Human Settlements in the Schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B2 2022, referred to the committee in accordance with Standing Rule 188, reports that it supports the vote. Yeah. In accordance with the Standing Rule 90, the African National Congress expressed its minority view that it does not support the vote. Can we agree to that amendment, honorable members? Member Maran?
No, Chair.
Sorry?
I'm of the view, Chair, you must first test whether our view is the minority view. And if it is the minority view, then we want it to be captured in terms of Rule 90. But at this stage, Chair, I think it cannot be proper to say it is definitely the minority view. Test it.
Okay, so you saying that we must change it from in accordance with Standing Rule 90, the African National Congress expressed its minority view that it does not support the vote. You want us to change it from there and say what?
Chair, I have said first that from the ANC side, we are basically lobbying this committee to not support the vote.
Okay, so the majority of the members, they support. You want us to note the minority view of the ANC, which is supported by the Standing Rule 90, not to support the vote. That's what it's saying. Yeah.
Chair, thank you. In relation to the report as it is, and perhaps we can express an opinion, and then I move that with the amended report as reflected on the now on the screen or in the meeting, that we support the vote 8. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair,
Yeah, Member Maran?
is the majority of members present, are they in support of this, that the vote should be supported?
Yes, Honorable Member, the majority, they support. Member
Who are they?
Maseko, Member Andrikas, Member America, and the minority view is represented by you, Honorable Member Maran, on behalf of Member Lily.
Oh, and then the Honorable Sean is not with me.
It's not member.
Thank you.
Not appointed to a committee. You have? But it's still
Okay, so there is a miscommunication.
Let me just, if I may, Chairperson.
Yeah.
I am a full member of this committee. I've got a letter from the speaker.
Okay.
Which is also on my telephone.
Okay.
So I can make the vote and I support vote 8.
Okay, thank you very much. With that being said, thank you very much, Honorable Member August. There was a miscommunication of the membership of Member August from the from Good. He also supports the vote, Honorable Maran. Is that in order with you that we can? I can get the second. I already got the second.
It's clear, Chair. Then, Chair, further on, in accordance with Standing Rule 19, African expressed the minority view that it does not support the view, and that view, Chair, been captured. This is the report, né? This is the committee report. Yeah, it's captured. I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you very much. With that being said, members, as it indicated in front of us that the Standing Committee of Human Settlements having deliberated on the subject of vote for the record 8 human settlements in the schedule of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B2 2022 referred to the committee in accordance with Standing Rule 188 report that it supports the vote. In accordance with the Standing Rule 90, the African National Congress expressed its minority view that it does not support the vote, of which the majority have supported the vote. Thank you very much, honorable members. With that being said, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, members, and thank you, Shumis and Nomfundo. Thank you very much. Thank you, Member August.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for the misinterpretation of the in-person communication. Okay.
Yes, so from now onwards, any meeting of the human settlements, I talked about that resolution that we will have it in person. As we say, the kids must go to the classrooms at school. We will also have the meetings in person.
Sure.
But the meeting was productive, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate that. That being said, like I said, meeting is adjourned. See you, honorable members.
Bye
Be safe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Nice day to everyone.
You're saying there's lunch at 1.
Yes. Members lodge.
Yeah, on 6.
Yeah, on the 6th floor. It's going to be here. Okay, we'll wait for it.
Confused with the people in the chamber.
Okay, because there's an. Yes. Okay, thank you very much, member.
Member August, what other committees are you in?
Environmental.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I was unaware that you were.
Yeah, they didn't send the communication. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it wasn't IPC yet, and if
They-
it's not IPC, then we can't act on it. Yes.
Okay.
That's why
Just-
I said,
Sean, just ask your secretary to ask if it's been ATC. No, the ATC is the one that informs the procedural officers.
because if we don't receive the IPC memo August, then we cannot view it as.
Just you must talk to Mario to request that they send you the ATC. Then it will make them to fast track it.
Yeah, no, they will ITC it. It's just that the reason why I said is because we haven't received an ITC.
Yeah.
And until we do, we cannot say.
They said it's ATC.
Oh.
They forgot or something.
Okay.
But welcome to the committee.
Welcome to my
Officially.
committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We done. We are not going to meet again for what is the committees today that are remaining?
Can you say that? What about NCOP? What about NCOP? You guys said this transport and public works this afternoon.
I've got transport and public works. I'm there.
The meeting adjourned.
Is it on this PC? I thought you said you're using your own PC.
When the description started. Holy crap. I don't know.